I have the distinct honor. First of all, my name is Elizabeth Wellington, and I am the lifestyle columnist with the Philadelphia Inquirer. It's a job I've held for about, I want to say 10, but the truth is 15 years, because I want to lie about my age. But I am here to introduce two people. The first person, Elaine Welteroth, is a friend in my head. She is only second to Tracy Ellis Ross, who's my main friend in my head. Anyway, Elaine Welteroth is amazing to me for three reasons. As a fashion columnist, I love her clothes. She always looks fabulous. She has my dream job, had my dream job as one of my dream jobs as the teen editor of Vogue. And when she was at Vogue, and I was working a couple of years ago at the Philadelphia Inquirer, a lot of what she wrote about Black Lives Matter really informed the work that we did here, or the work that I did here writing about African Americans and Black people and the struggles that we were going through here in Philadelphia. Because even though I'm a fashion writer, you know, when there's fashion and style and people, there's all of that stuff is kind of connected in this big bowl of love and life. So now she's got this great new book. It's called More Than Enough, and it's amazing because it's part memoir, but it's also part sort of life lessons. So all of us striving and on the ladders of fabulosity can really, take some tips and some hints to read the book. I've read most of it, and I really enjoyed it, and it's just a really true, authentic, and honest life story. So that's Elaine. So the next person is like a real friend, and that would be Rakia Reynolds. When I first moved here to Philadelphia, she was one of the first people that I met, and she was one of the first African-American women who had her own business here in Philly, back when we were all into Sex and the City fashion, and everybody was fabulous, and so I wasn't quite fabulous yet, and she was already fabulous. So over the years, I've watched her business, Skai Blue Media, become this amazing sort of almost a national firm, or a national firm, where she has worked with Serena Williams. She just launched her own clothing line called Everyday Jane. And the beautiful thing about this is that Elaine and Rakia are such good friends that Rakia actually named a piece of one of her pieces in Everyday Jane, a shirt, after Elaine Welteroth. So they are real homegirls. So you're going to see a lot of authenticity up here. So I am so happy to be here to introduce both of them. Please welcome Elaine and Rakia to the Philadelphia Free Library. And let's just give it up. Hi, ladies.
What's up, Philly? You and that phone. Y'all know
it
Elaine.
Didn't happen if it's not on the gram, you know?
Yes. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. No one I'd rather sit down in Philly with than you.
Well, thank you, Lainey Pooh. Hi, you guys. So I'm so excited to be here. Elaine and I go way back. I've known her. I can't even remember when we did meet, but I can't remember. But I just remember the fun slumber parties that we've had, the long nights of just all of this talking and philosophical thinking. She's a thinker and now a writer, so you can see all of her thoughts and just the role that you played in my life for so long. And reading this book, it's like you think you know a person. Like, I feel like I've been there and I've caught little glimpses of the way. And then just reading this book, I was like emotional at times. I got choked up at times. I laughed a lot. And let me just tell you guys, shout out to the Skai Blue Media team, we're reading the book together as a team builder with the team. So we are only on page, well, we're almost done. We're not quite done yet. So I don't want you to talk about the ending too much here. I feel like, the conclusion next chapter. But
where are you at? Just so I have a sense. Where are you at?
You're right at I think you're
I'm
about to
pop
tell
quizzing her.
No, I knew you were going to do that. You're about to tell Essence. I think yes, you're about to tell Essence. So has everybody here read the book? I don't want to spoil it for people. Oh, see,
We have books for sale. Don't you worry.
So you're about to tell Essence, and there was just in the beginning of the book, I did want to just start off by saying that as I was reading this book, not only did I see myself, so I'm a mother of 3, and I'm thinking, this is originally when you talked about this book and I saw it, I was like, oh, this is for like a younger woman starting her journey. And as an older woman, I'm not saying I'm old, but as an older woman who's not in her 20s and maybe nestled or snuggled on her way out of her 30s, I saw myself in this book, Lainey. And not only did I see myself in this book, but I saw my children in this book. I saw my 16-year-old in this book. And I have to tell you, my 16-year-old, because she's a multiracial child, and going to school and people touching her hair, and I feel like she feels othered right now. My 11-year-old who is in a classroom and she's the only black child. And I have to tell my child, you are a black child. And she's like, no, I'm not. I'm not black because I'm light. And I'm like, no, you're black. So I think this is going to go on for so many people. And I don't want to just say women. I want my son to read this book, my little Brammy, who is 9 right now. So I just thank you, Boo. I thank you for sharing your words with us. You took us through a journey, and I think that this story needed to be told, and I'm glad that you trusted the timing of your life and did it right now. Yes. So
She's trying to make me cry before we even start.
but
You got a little couple drops of water in your eye too.
And Elaine knows I'm not emotional. I'm a little bit of a hard rock when it comes to it.
She thinks she is.
I am. I don't get emotive. I don't choke up. And when I got into it, was not even past the first chapter, and I was reading about your mom and dad, and I was like, shit, Rakia. And I'm like, making sure nobody's looking at me, like nobody sees me doing this, right? So I appreciate it, but I want the people to know, and I want you to start us off with an excerpt so the people can feel what we're all feeling.
All right, are the people ready? Okay. I like the energy in Philly. All right, let's do this. This is from a chapter called New World Order. And every chapter begins with a quote. This one begins with a quote from Nina Simone. An artist's duty, as far as I'm concerned, is to reflect the times. It was hard for me to ignore how few decision-making seats in media were occupied by people of color. Obama had just won his second term in office, but people of color in fashion were still grossly underrepresented behind the scenes, as were storytellers and image makers in media overall. I think back on my early days at Ebony, when I got the opportunity to witness the legendary model agent and image activist Beth Ann Hardison use her position as one of few influential blacks in fashion to advocate for the black model. It was one of the most memorable moments of my early career, one that inspired me to use my position to be a change maker too. Beth Ann was an agitator and a self-appointed hellraiser. She's never one to shy away from confrontation. In fact, she used it as her tool for change. In the summer of 2008, she sent out letters inviting big-name designers, casting agents, photographers, and editors to come together for a candid conversation about fashion's diversity problem. Beth Ann was a well-respected mother figure to many in the industry. Certainly, no one wanted to be remembered by her for not showing up. So they came, likely thinking, how bad could it be, right? That little amphitheater in the Bowery Hotel filled up with a mostly white audience, some, according to Beth Ann, verging on racist. Then, one by one, she called out people by name for transgressions such as not casting a single black girl in their shows or campaigns. It was a takedown and a true sight to behold. especially as a young Black editor. As one of very few Black fashion insiders with real influence, Bethann made it her business to publicly agitate until decision makers felt forced to do the right thing. And then the 2008 all-Black issue of Italian Vogue came out, featuring all Black models, and it set the industry ablaze, for a season at least. From that moment on, I knew I was put in this industry to serve as a change agent too. I didn't want to just take up space at the table. I wanted to use my seat to shake things up. I also realized that in order to truly change an industry from the inside out, to rebuild broken systems and to change hearts and minds, it takes more than just one voice and more than just one way. While I admire and revere Bethann, we need people who are willing to call out injustice face to face on the front lines. So I'm saying, while I admire and revere Bethann, I recognize that my activism would look different. As an editor, especially now in an influential post, I had the power to help change the narrative through storytelling. In an era that applauds even the most superficial embrace of diversity, equating tokenism with progress, I was determined to use the opportunity I was given to make a difference by bringing more of my authentic self to the role. I had had enough of feeling intimidated by self-important airs, sterile environments, and some of the stiff personalities in the industry. As an FOD, first only different, sometimes just being yourself is the radical act. When you occupy space in systems that weren't built for you, your authenticity is your activism. But doing any radical work that has the power to shift systems, especially from within a corporate structure, requires allyship. Before I could go from assimilator to disruptor, I had to find my voice and build my tribe.
Damn. Girl, you better go ahead and do that. You better go ahead and do that. I'm like listening like, yes. Well, you know, you started the book. I mean, in the very beginning of the book, you were really bold and you were forceful in the intention of saying, like, this is who this book is for. This is a love letter to the people that feel overwhelmed, othered. Talk to us about why you chose to use those words as the opener for the book, of like being intentional of who you wanted to read the book.
Yeah, I wanted to be very clear about my intention with this book. I learned that from Oprah, who I watched every day at 4 p.m. after school. And one of the greatest Oprah-isms that I picked up was this practice of setting an intention before moving into any project, before going into any day, and it's something that she does with her teams. And so I felt it was very important for me. I mean, I even called my introduction intention instead of introduction, because when you are clear with your intention, the outcome isn't yours to own. You can only control and be responsible for your intention. And to be as clear as possible is important, especially when you're putting really personal work out into the world and it's going to go through many hands and many minds. And I just wanted it to be very clear. This is not The Devil Wears Prada Part 2. This is not the story of how Teen Vogue got woke. Okay? This is for you. And it's more than a memoir. It is really the story of anyone who knows what it is to be the only one of them in the room. It is the story of anyone who's ever had a dream bigger than the small town you came from and no blueprint to get there. And it's for anyone who knows what it is to feel underestimated, undervalued, overwhelmed, overlooked, and still decides to overcome. And I think that it was a brave thing for me to do this now because of the voice in my head that says, who are you to write a book like this at 32? And the fear of having to confront that question out in the world. And yet, I had to remind myself, like this book cover says, you are more than enough. and you are claiming space for your story, no matter what anyone says, because this is my testimony more than a memoir. This is an offering. This is something I wish that I had when I was in my 20s, when I was in high school even, because I think we need more young women of color to tell their story, because there are universal truths that are locked up in the stories women never get to tell. And you know what? The audience that I wrote this for, they don't need this when we're 50. Y'all don't need this when you're 50. You need this now. We need to talk about this stuff now. And the intention with this book is to invite conversation. Yeah. It's to crack open conversations that I don't think we're having enough. And so in order for me, my mom always says, what comes from the heart touches the heart. So I had to dig deep. I had to be very vulnerable, and I had to be really real on every single page, and it paid off. It was scary. It was hard work, but it really has paid off because I get to be here with all of you and in conversation with all of you. So that's why I wrote the book, and that's the intention behind it.
Oh, we love that. And y'all, her mom, for real?
She's the hero of the story. She's the
really
shero.
Is. And that little white dress that she wore to your book blessing, I was like, yes, body. Yes.
Yo, my mom is like about to be a momfluencer. I'm like, let me just get 10%. She's on the Audible, by the way. She's on the Audible.
She is?
Yeah, she and my dad.
They are.
Yeah, they're going to be the next audio book stars. They were hams. They were in there hamming it up. It's actually really good. You guys should listen to it after you buy the book, because that's what New York Times
She's
counts.
like, make sure you buy the book. That's why y'all came here, to buy the book. But a lot of people have bought their books, yes? Yes, I told you. Somebody told me, Aurora Archer in the audience told me that she read through her book in like 30 hours.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Wow. She's a... Okay, thank you, sis. And thanks to you, single-handedly, I have made the New York Times bestselling list. Thank you.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the hustle, because I love that you talk about this. Well, thank you, darling.
You're welcome.
The hustle behind the highlight reel.
I feel like we're on a porch in the South.
Just
sipping sweet
that's
tea.
That's the vibe.
With our good friends.
That's the vibe.
That is the vibe in my gingham.
Yes. Wait, y'all should have seen the other outfit that she wanted to come out in. She had 2 moments backstage.
Someone suggested an outfit change, you guys.
Oh, Brandon.
I was like, this is a free event. Maybe for a paid event.
She was like,
no shade.
I am not doing an outfit change. I can't. I can't with you. All right, what were we talking about? The hustle behind the highlight reel. And I love that you talk about like these moments that we're all building, this highlight reel. Yeah. But people need to understand that there is hustle behind the highlight reel. And I just wanted you to, unpack a few moments, because not everybody has read the book and we don't want to spoil things, but just unpack a few moments of your hustle behind this big highlight reel that you have.
Oh, I mean, the whole I think what you will get is 95% is the hustle. And like 4% is the highlight reel and 1% is sleep. But yeah, we live in this culture where we scroll each other's success stories online every single day, and we compare and despair, and we are only seeing the shiniest slice of everyone's lives. And I personally felt like I did not want to participate in putting out lies about success online, because I'm thinking about the next generation who doesn't remember a time without social media. And so much of their ideals and their dreams are informed by what they're seeing of your life online. And as someone who was held up as a trailblazer in my career for the opportunities that I had and the accomplishments, I felt like I am doing a disservice to this next generation if all I'm giving you are my white boots and a boomerang. Like, I know they're cute and fun. I do a mean boomerang, but I have more to say than that. I have more to say than could ever fit in a pithy Instagram caption. Mm-hmm. And this next generation deserves more of the truth. And, you know, in this ephemeral world where we just, everything is one day to the next, we have such a short attention span, there's something really special about the permanence of a book, right? And this idea that, like, I don't have to sum anything up ever again. When a young black girl comes up to me and asks me, how did you do that? Or help me figure this out. Or I want to do this, but I have no idea how to, I'm just like, now I actually have something tangible that I can hand you and say, it's in here. It's in here. And it's something you will never find online on this thing. This is great for inspiration, but I think we need more truth and more vulnerability and more long-form conversation than you can ever find online. And so the hustle is, again, I wrote this book because I wanted to go behind the how and the why behind the what you see, and invite other people to do the same. Yeah, I think there's a lot of hustle. I mean, I don't know, does something stand out in your mind about in particular?
I mean, I met you when you were at Ebony.
Oh yeah,
and then
they called me PB&J.
Yes.
Because I came in every day with a stack of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and throughout the day it would just go down. And then, because I started my career at the beginning of the recession, and it was like a video game where, like, someone around you was getting let go every day from their job. So it's like, am I next? Am I next? It was I lived every day at work like it would be my last, because it could be. And I think I've never let that hustle mentality go, especially as a first-generation college graduate. Didn't come from wealth. There is no backup plan. There is no safety net. And when I moved from California, where I'm from, a small town called Newark, California, you've never heard of it. No, not New Jersey.
I'm from Newark. I like that.
Yes, we have that in common, and you're my Sag sister. But when I flew to New York for this dream, that day I changed my phone number from 510 to 917. I'm like, I'm not going back. I'm going to figure this out. And so that meant saving every penny. That meant eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every day. That meant coming in early, staying late. That meant running a department at 21 by myself and figuring out what that meant, what that even meant. Working 10 times as hard because I was working at a black magazine, which I learned when I landed in New York is at the very bottom of the media hierarchy. And I remember getting there and just being like, where's the fashion closet? This is not like the Devil Wears Prada. Lord, have I made a mistake? Because I was supposed to start at Essence magazine, and I had a whole kind of, it's in the book, but I had this.
But you should talk a little bit about the Harriet story, because meeting her at your book blessing. I'm talking about this book blessing. So let me tell you, being raised, in the black church. It is all about the glory and talking about the story behind the glory and getting people in a room that love you and care about you to share a special moment. And to kick off Elaine's book tour, she had a book blessing where she invited family and friends and had this intimate moment. And everybody covered her and prayed and shared some special moments that you will later on during the Q&A. But listening to Harriet's testimony and talking about you as an individual, again, I got to see some of those glimpses, but I would love for you to talk to people about how that happened, the story with Harriet, and maybe talk a little bit about the blue bathing suit and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So Harriet Cole was my first boss. And when I was in college, at the very end of my college career, I went through what I call the college crisis, which was an existential crisis that we all go through, right? How many of you guys went through that? You're like, why am I here? What is my passion and purpose? What job do I take? And I had done some internships that I really wasn't very into, but they came with a more steady sort of paycheck and career climb. But I just really felt dead inside when I went to those internships. And it taught me very early that that's not how I want to feel going into work every day. And if I want to be excellent, if I want to be successful, I have to love what I do. And so it forced me to confront myself and really go deep into a soul-searching spiral to figure out what the answers to those questions. You know, why am I here? What is my passion? What is my purpose? And how can I get someone to pay me to do that stuff? And it was a really dark time. It was a really trying time. It was a really prayerful time. And it led me into the prayer closet, as we call it in Black church. And
Praise God, praise God.
Can I get amen? Can I get hallelujah? And I remember so distinctly one night getting such a clear answer to my prayers after like 3 months of just feeling in the dark, wondering, is God even real? Is he even up there? You know, questioning my childhood upbringing in church. You know, when people start catching the Holy Ghost and you're like, is that for real? Or when they say like, I heard God say. No, and then they do the. Yeah, and I'm like, did you really hear God? Like, how did he actually sound? So I'm really testing my faith in this moment by praying for direction and clarity and guidance. And one night I got it. And it was literally like going from the dark to the light. I remember sort of being in my parents' study, and I was Googling, like, what do I do with my life? What do I do with my life? What do I do with my life? And I had applied to a bunch of magazine internships. And then at the end of the night, I just looked down and I saw this magazine. I didn't even really see the cover. I didn't see the title, but I saw the cover. It was Alicia Keys in this gorgeous red dress, and I went straight to the cover story, and something almost audibly told me, directed me to look up the woman in the byline. Her name is Harriet Cole. So I was obedient. I followed that, and I Googled her name, and then I read her bio, and you guys, it was as if her bio read like the blueprint for the exact career I would want. She became my career role model, and I'd never seen anyone that I could really relate to out there in the world doing something that I could see myself doing and loving, and in a big way, in an audacious way, a Black woman who had created this really multifaceted career for herself in media. And she carved out her own intersection in media that was sort of at the intersection of, you know, Black culture, spirituality, and style. And she started at Essence magazine as and became the fashion director, and moved on to become a best-selling author, moved into TV, film, and had this really illustrious career. And I was like, that is what I want to do. Because before that, I felt like I was having to check a box or fit myself into a box. And I didn't know how to combine all of these passions and interests and gifts into one fulfilling job title or career path until I saw her. So I became obsessed. I snail mailed her. I cold called her. I followed up incessantly. And it wasn't like I was spreading out my, seeds. I was, all my eggs were in this one basket. It was just like Harriet Cole or bust. And so I will never forget the day before, eventually her assistant let me talk to her because I was like threatened basically to fly to New York to bring her coffee. And she was like, please do not fly to New York to bring her coffee. And so to get me to stop calling, she let us have an informational phone call. And that call changed my life. There was so much synergy, and it went from 15 minutes to 45 minutes. And at the end of it, I said, if there's ever an opportunity to work with you, please keep me in mind. And if I never speak with you again, just know you've already changed my life. And I meant it. And I hung up, and I was like, I'll never hear from her again. And it's totally fine, because I know exactly where I'm going now. And I got A through Z plan, and I just became, that's what we need is a vision. Yeah. You need vision, and you need faith. And then you need a relentless drive to go after it. And I now had all three, so I was set. And I graduated early on accident from college. It's a whole thing. It's in the book. And it was terribly scary. It sounds sexy. It was so scary because it meant I had this extra semester. And I moved home with my parents, also very scary for any ambitious person. I got 2 jobs, one as a waitress one as a receptionist in San Francisco. And I stacked every coin because my goal was to save $10,000 in order to move to New York by June 1st. And my plan A was to get an Essence internship because that was the dream. For any black girl who loves style, like that is the Bible, that's the magazine I grew up with. And so I get that internship. And you would have thought the clouds parted and I was elevated into the sky. You couldn't tell me nothing. I was like, I have made it. And I remember I bribed them in the interview. I was like, they were like, what department would you like to work in? I was like, literally, you could put me in the janitorial department. And one day I will be editor-in-chief, just mark my words. I thought I was crazy too. So I got placed in work and wealth, which I was like, fine, I'll take it. And then 30 days before I was set to move to New York, Harriet Cole calls me back. This is 5 months after our conversation. I thought she had long forgotten about me. And I was like, this has got to be a butt dial. But that means she saved my phone number. What is going on? And it was Harriet Cole, sure enough. And she meant to call me. And she said, and then she told me she was looking for an intern. She was looking for a new assistant. Hers was moving to Italy. And she had a shoot in California. She remembered I lived there and wondered if I would be her production assistant for the day. She'd pay me $250. I was like, I will pay you $350. And she said, and I don't know what a production assistant is, but I am there. I'm in there. And I packed up my bags and went down to Malibu. She had no idea that I lived 8 hours away from the shoot in California. Not a problem. And I showed up.
Always been a go-getter.
Yeah.
Always.
And I would have actually driven to New York, to be honest. So I show up on set, you guys, and the call sheet says, Serena Williams cover shoot. She didn't mention that. So I'm on cloud 10. And I really feel like the Black Lauren Conrad at this moment. I'm like living my best life. And then the first face I see, you guys, is this woman named Marcia Hamilton, who is a celebrity hairstylist, now working with Serena Williams, who was trained in my Aunt Janet's salon in San Jose, California, who did my hair for prom. So it was one of those moments where God just lets you know you are in the right place.
I love that.
And
Jesus is real.
Is this real? Yeah. And the one thing that Harriet had said is, do not talk to the celebrity. But Marcia introduced me to her. What was I supposed to do? You know? So we get on. It's awesome. And then on set, I'm behind the monitor next to Harriet. Not where I should be. Now, in retrospect, now I know. Interns on their first day.
When I read that, I was like, I see her standing right there.
Yeah. Who was that girl? Oh my God. So I'm standing there and I'm trying to find this perfect balance of, like being helpful and adding value while also knowing my role and not overstepping. And it's killing me because here's Serena in this gorgeous pool posing in this bathing suit that just wasn't the right one for her body. And I just knew that there was a better one. So I'm like, I took a really big risk and I was just like, Harriet. I was like, I really think she would look great in that blue swimsuit. And Harriet goes, and I was like, I'm fired. I messed this up. And then she waits it out. It was painful how long she waited, but then she goes, Serena, we'll try you in the blue swimsuit. And I was like, yes. And then, you guys, guess what made the cover?
That blue suit!
And at the end of the day, Harriet said to me, and that was a risk. I was like, she's either gonna love it or hate it. And at the end, she offered me a job.
Look at that.
And 6 months prior, I had no idea how I was going to make this big dream of being a magazine editor happen. I knew no one in New York. I knew no one in this industry. I feel like I manifested this mentor. And then she opened up this door for me. And at that point, I already had this coveted Essence internship. But in my heart, in my soul, in my bones, in my spirit, I knew that working with Harriet was a God thing. And the way that all of this had unfolded was a divine intervention on my plans. And so I had to make a tough decision to go against what everyone was telling me, because at the time everyone was like, why would you work at Ebony? For those of you who don't know the distinction, Ebony's kind of like, you know, like your mom and pop store, like you're like, it's like at the dentist's office, it's like your dusty, you know, it's a little older, it's like, and not as fashion forward. And so I said, you know, I really had to, the thing I learned from that experience was don't chase the sexy.
Yeah.
Chase your enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. And I was enthusiastic about working for Harriet and learning from her day by day. And so I had to make that hard phone call. I called Essence back and I said, you know I said I was going to be janitor. I know I said that. But I'm going to go work for your competitor. And they weren't very happy. But here's what I will say. 2 weeks in, we were shooting Michelle Obama, and I was on set.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have happened for me for years.
Yeah.
If
I remember
ever.
that photo too. Yeah.
And I was the tampon girl. I had to. One of her friends needed a tampon, and I had it, and that was my claim to fame. And then at the end of the summer, we can say tampon. It's a room full of women.
Yes.
And at the end of that summer, again, this was summer 2008, so it was the beginning of the recession. This was the first summer that Time Inc., which owned the company that owned Essence, did not give out a single job offer. So had I chased the sexy into that sexy job, I would have been in the very unsexy employment line back home in California. So it was actually following my gut, my instincts, my enthusiasm that kept me. Mm-hmm. And honestly, there is no way that I would have ever been able to climb the ranks at Condé Nast, that I would have been able to lead and help transform a brand like Teen Vogue had I not started in the trenches at Ebony. Mm-hmm. It is where I learned everything. Mm-hmm. It is where I was nurtured and groomed for success. Again, I had to work 10 times as hard for half the respect. Every win was hard fought. And I took that kind of relentlessness and that scrappiness and that eagerness to to center Black excellence into every job that I took after that. Yeah. And so while most people know me from my time at Teen Vogue, I think it's really important to talk about where we came from.
Ebony.
And I started at Ebony.
Started at Ebony under an amazing Black woman, Harriet
Yes.
Cole. Again, one of the most amazing individuals that I've ever met. And to hear her speak was just, it really put everything into perspective. I do want to talk a little bit about Teen Vogue because the people know you for disrupting and really bringing so much authenticity and honesty and true stories, like bringing stories into Teen Vogue that would have never been told. And in the book, you say, in order to change the story, we have to change the storytellers. So, and I think that, I told you that was one of my favorite quotes in the book. In order to change the story, we have to change the storytellers. So can you just unpack a few moments for us about your experience and the things that you were doing at Teen Vogue? We know this is not a book about Teen Vogue, but we heard you.
There's a lot of Teen Vogue in the book.
But we do want to hear some of those moments. And I think a lot of people want to know, how did you do it? Because you were bold, and then there were moments like the story about the braiding and all of that. There were moments where you really had to just swallow being fearful or swallow like, oh my gosh, am I going to do the right thing? So unpack some of those moments for us.
Yeah. Well, and first I would just say that I think we need to reframe fear, because we need to stop telling each other to be fearless, because fear is part of the process. And I think the goal is to become friends with fear, to be able to look in the face of fear and to be able to say to fear, I'm doing it anyway. And that's really what I had to do many, many, many times and still have to do it. But I mean, there's so many times that the changing the storytellers is, I think, important to underline, because we are living in this day and age where not everybody is hashtagging representation matters, and diversity and inclusion have become buzzwords in marketing, and what we're seeing now is progress. I mean, we've seen progress. In terms of the outward representation on the covers of magazines and campaigns, we're seeing a lot more of diversity. But I think what we need to be pushing for is more inclusion behind the scenes, because that is the only way to produce authentic representation. And that is the difference between authentic representation and commercializing cultures. And so at Teen Vogue, being one of few or the only Black editor for much of my career, before I was in a position to help change and rearrange that, I felt a lot of pressure. I felt the burden. I felt, it was weird. I went through what I call assimilation syndrome first, where going from Ebony into mainstream media, I went to Glamour next, was a culture shock, and it was actually really hard to get in the door, because many of you might know, or perhaps you do not know, but coming from Black media and going into mainstream general market media it doesn't happen very often. And the door is often closed to people who get pigeonholed in Black media. And it's as if all the work that you do in these spheres for people who look like us is sort of discounted or diminished. And so I had to bang down doors, and eventually I got this job at Glamour, and by that point I was slicking my hair back into a low pony. I was wearing the khaki pants and the round toe Tory Burch flats.
I remember those
hardcore.
days.
That's when I met you.
Yeah.
I was like hardcore assimilation syndrome. I mean, I was sipping that Kool-Aid because it was a survival tactic to get in the door, to be respected, to gain influence, to gain credibility. And my goal became just to fit in. And then I got the job at Teen Vogue, which I then learned in headlines was a history-making role. I didn't know that. It's not like I applied for that. You don't apply to be the first Black to do something, right? You learn it in the headlines. You're like, oh, well, damn, I better think a little bit more critically about the work that I'm going to do from this seat. And so when I read in the headlines, Elaine Welteroth becomes first Black beauty director in Condé Nast 107-year history, it reframed the way I stepped into that role. And I recognized that the importance, it was critical for me to bring stories to that table that would never be told otherwise. Because if I did not, I would be doing a disservice to the community that I came from and to all the marginalized communities that have been left out of these pages and certainly not centered, ever. And so I actually saw all of those things that made me different became my superpowers. They became my unique advantage, my unique lens that I could bring as an editor. And so I had to kind of understand what it means to show up fully as your authentic self. We toss that around, but you have to grow into that. And I think the way that the story is told in the press is like, oh, Teen Vogue hired this Black girl and then Teen Vogue got woke overnight. Wow. Yeah. That's not how it happened. I was there for actually 5 or 6 years, and I was the beauty director first. I did not come in with my fist up. There was strategy and there was timing, and the changes at Teen Vogue happened story by story, hire by hire. Battles won and lost behind the scenes and out on the battlefield that is Black Twitter.
We love Black Twitter.
I love Black Twitter, but Black Twitter has come for me one good time. I remember, It's in the book. It's in the book.
Why don't you talk a little bit about?
I should talk about actually though, in terms of changing the storytellers, is the story about Lacey Redway.
Yes.
Because this was the first time that I really was able, after learning the hard way about what my responsibility really looked like to advocate for us the right way, which you guys can read in the book. After that, this was the first time that I had to really stand up to my authority figures and my peers, and I had to question the system for how we hire people, and I had to push back, and it was uncomfortable. And I talk about being an agitator. I'm not naturally an agitator until you really get to know me. If you're paying my bills, I am not naturally an agitator, you know? And so it's difficult because you're lively. It's like, yeah, we can talk about showing up fully in your authenticity, bringing your whole self to work, but at the end of the day, you also want to stay employed. And so there's a dance that we do. And for so much of our careers, we code switch, we change it up, and we do what it takes to stay in the game. But I had to put that on the line, and it sounds a bit dramatic, but in some ways, it felt that way. So we decided that we were going to shoot Amanda Stenberg for the cover of Teen Vogue. And this was, at the time, sort of a very unconventional cover for us. She didn't have a big blockbuster film out. She was really actually rising to popularity on the internet because of her viral Tumblr post that was called "Don't Cash Crop My Cornrows." Mm-hmm. And it essentially was educating the whole world, schooling the world on cultural appropriation. Mm-hmm. And this was a turning point for Teen Vogue to even have her on the cover. And so I was the cover editor, and so I remember bringing to the creative meeting these images of hair references of Angela Davis. Everyone loved it. They loved the idea of this afro and this, she's a change agent, rebel for a cause, all these things that have become now like marketing candy. Mm-hmm. And then I saw the call sheet, and the woman who was hired to do her hair was white. Yep. And a person of color hadn't even been considered. And I just thought, we cannot commercialize her message and disrespect it at the same time. Yes. I had to bring up what this looked like. And particularly, I knew if we did this, they were gonna come for me because I'm the only one up in here, and who represents, who is supposed to be speaking up. And so it was difficult, and it required challenging an entire system. This is how it works at Vogue. The photographer, who is often white and male, dictates who does hair and makeup. They like to work with their friends. And this is how, and the same photographers get hired again and again, therefore the same hair and makeup people get hired again and again, therefore the image makers never change. And it's often impossible for people who look like us to ever break into that system. Mm-hmm. And so here was an opportunity as an editor inside that system to be able to intentionally open the door and reach out and pull someone in who looks like me. And it's the thing about it's all politics. It's never about talent. It's not like, you can't tell me that this woman is going to give this girl a more authentic afro than Lacey Redway, who is a black woman who understands she has one herself. And so it wasn't about skill. It's about who we're giving opportunities to and why. And it was difficult having that conversation with my French creative director, who was raised at French Vogue, where they outright said the 3 things that will never sell on a cover: black girl, black people, models, or anyone that's not a household name. And we actually, that following August, had just done all 3, and that became our best-selling cover of the year. So we were learning together collectively that the world, the zeitgeist was changing. And there was an opening in the matrix, and all of us in this room, people who look like us, were having a voice on social media, and we were able to say what we wanted and what wasn't working, and when we are not represented properly, you will hear about it. And I think that empowered me to find my voice inside the system to be able to speak up. And it was hard, and it was challenging to help them see it from a different perspective, but ultimately, they agreed, and we had Lacey Redway, who now has gone on to have an incredible career. She's extraordinarily talented, but she came on, she did Amanda's hair for that cover, and I will never forget how emotional I was on set that day, and I saw not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 curly afros on a Vogue set. I never thought I would see that. And it just made me really, really proud. And then when that story came out, I had ended up pairing Amandla with Solange to talk about black hair. You know, what it is to be what is black girl magic, and what does it mean to be a black girl today? And they went deep. And Solange went so deep, she even wrote this whole poetic intro that when I got it, I remember it was the first time I had done something in this magazine that I needed when I was growing up, and I didn't see myself in magazines like this. And I cried at my desk. Like, I wept. It was like an ugly cry. It was a loud, ugly cry. But that was when I knew, like, this is why I'm here. This is why I'm here. And as my mom said, what comes from the heart touches the heart. I was like, this is going to touch somebody's heart. I don't know if this is going to sell, but I know that this is the right thing to do. And then it went on to be one of our most successful covers. And it actually was kind of the beginning of a turning point for Teen Vogue. We started to move into a different direction because of the momentum and the response that we ended up getting from communities like this that weren't our core audience prior to that. But battle by battle, story by story, yeah.
And, you know, one of the things I did want to say, oh, I'm getting the time. Oh, okay. I just wanted to quick give you a shout, and I know we're going to end, but you are so honest about you as a biracial woman and, you know, learning your enoughness. And, you know, my friends and I, we always have conversations around, I'm a black woman. Like, I am a black woman, and we sometimes look at people like you and we'll say, well, she's light or she's thin and she's this. And I think what you've unpacked in this book around this notion of you are more than enough and really understanding your enoughness, because they're calling my time, I just want y'all to say, go ahead and buy this book because you will relate to this book. Your children, your auntie, your nana, your friend. I know she said 50-year-old people don't need it, but guess what? Y'all might need it too. How about that?
Allow me to rephrase.
But I'm just saying, snaps and claps to you, boo. I can't wait to see what else you bring us next. And yeah, I think the people want to do the Q&A.
Thank you. Hopefully somebody will ask about privilege and power, because I know that's where we are going next.
I was about to, but he said to do the...
Okay. Well, you guys, I know that felt short, but I promise you that the best is yet to come. Because we are now moving into Q&A, but we're going to do Q&A our way. And we did this at the book blessing. I tried it out on my people, and it was a beautiful experience. So I thought I would bring this to you guys, my now extended family. All of you should have received a card when you got in, or should be in your chair. If you have it, hold it up. Hopefully you have a pen as well. So I said early on that the goal and the intention of this book is to start conversations that matter. And so we're gonna do a little exercise. Are you guys down to do a little exercise? Yeah. Okay, this is an exercise that's gonna bring the spirit of this book to life. It's literally gonna bring the subtitle to life. The subtitle is Claiming Space for Who You Are, No Matter What They Say. And so the card invites you to do the same. So we're gonna act it out. We're gonna do a quick, spontaneous, on the spot call and response, you and I, so you can teach the people what they're about to do, show the people an example, and then we're gonna take just a moment of silence, and each of you guys will reflect and fill out your card, and then when you have a question in Q&A, just stand up, raise your hand, and if you don't mind, read the card first, say what you're claiming space for, and then ask your question. So This is how it's gonna go. I,
Rakia Reynolds,
am claiming space for...
Look how long it's taken me. Saying no to more things.
Ooh, but not this. No matter what.
The people say.
May say. Yes.
Yes. No matter what the people may say.
Yes. Give a round of applause for doing that on the spot.
On the spot, because I didn't know you were going to have me do it. I would have thought about it.
They didn't know either. So, by the way, as you go to think about this, the they, no matter what the they part may say, it can be an internal they, it could be fear, it could be self-doubt, it could be anxiety, or it could be an external they. It could be someone, it could be your boss, it could be your boyfriend.
Sky Blue Media, please.
Could be Rakia. But just be creative, and we're just going to take a quick 30 seconds to fill it out. And then when you're ready, just put your hand up.
And we're all sisters and brothers here.
We are.
and
It's a safe space.
It's a safe space.
What happens here stays here.
Yes. This is the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection.
Yes.
Sisterly affection, Deanna
Yes.
Williams.
Okay, so are you guys ready?
Good evening. Thank you for this wonderful exhibition. My name is Yaya Rivera, and it says here, I am Yashida Yaya Mari Rivera Calero.
Ooh.
And I
Reclaim your roots.
and I am claiming space for myself, my soul, my health, no matter what I may say.
Yes, no matter what I may say. That's what I'm talking about.
Sometimes we're our own worst enemies.
And I am the poster child of that. So my question for you is, as a young woman that is super fierce in all plethora of fields, how do you claim your space in the sense of being in a boardroom? Because too often in many fields, especially in media, they look at you and your age and they say, take seats. So like, how do you, kind of regain or claim your space regardless of your age, your ethnicity, your gender, etc., and still being able to not have to like put your package on the table? Like, I feel like sometimes women have to do like be fierce and strong and kind of like give that message.
Where is my videographer? Are we getting this? This is good. Hope someone's getting this. Thank you. And a lot of the book talks about what I call the trifecta. Ageism, sexism, and racism. I had them all. So many of us do, but I think ageism in particular, it goes both ways, especially for women. You're either not old enough or you're too old. And for a lot of my career, I found myself in roles where I was considered the youngest, too young perhaps by some people's measure, and I often had people who worked, under me who were actually older than me, and it created an awkward dynamic. So my rule of thumb became just never tell anyone your age. Just protect it fiercely as if your job depends on it, because it just might. And I learned that early on because when I was an assistant at Ebony, but also wearing 10 hats and running the beauty and style department at 23, I got invited to my first business lunch with a black woman, a corporate executive in beauty. And I was really excited to connect with her. And I think a lot of times I got mistaken for being older, which served me. It was advantageous in work, but then it made me feel like an imposter, like I might get found out. And during this particular breakfast meeting, she started to ask me a series of questions. It was very clear she was trying to figure out how old I was. And I was still naive, so I went down the rabbit hole, answered her questions, and when she realized, she straight up then said, "How old are you?" I said, 23. And I will tell you, within a minute, she looked at her phone, she made up some excuse, and she ditched me right there on the spot and stuck me with the bill. And at the time, I was making $20 an hour, no overtime, no T&E budget, and it was like $100 that I didn't have, and I just remember like that stuck with me. And I vowed to never tell anyone my age ever again. And actually, the funny thing is, even when I was in a position where I had assistants, I would literally cover their eyes while they were booking my travel and insert my DOB so they didn't have to see, because I'm like, this is not getting out. And it wasn't until I got the job, the top job at Teen Vogue, when it was blasted all over the internet that I was 29 and the youngest editor-in-chief in Condé Nast history, that I was like, well, I guess the cat's out of the bag now.
I think that's when I found out how old you were.
Yeah, I wouldn't even tell Rakia. And a funny side story, but she actually cooked me up with a man who barely made the book. Who was double my age. And she got me in this relationship, and then he was like, wait, aren't you Rakia's age? And I was like,
We're not that
woman never tells. That's for the next book. But I didn't think we were talking about that. Well, this is family. We're just on the porch.
Come get her.
But the ageism is real. And God, there's so many instances. I remember when I was promoted, I remember walking into a boardroom and everyone was talking and sort of was like, are we waiting for anyone? And they were like, yes, actually, we're waiting for the editor-in-chief to show up. And I was like, well, let's get started. And those kinds of microaggressions are par for the course. And I think that's the stuff we just don't talk about. Those moments, like we live in a culture of celebration around firsts. We celebrate the progress, but we do not create space to talk about the scars and the bruises that come with breaking through glass ceilings. And I think we need that. We need to create safe spaces where you can still be a strong, would you call me a badass, or you call me something cute, fierce or something? Yeah, where you can still be fierce and share the times that you felt fragile and the times that you felt dissed and disempowered, and where you couldn't find your voice. And there have been many times in my career where I've had to make the decision as the only Black person in the room who barely made it in here. I had to do the math. That microaggression hit hard, but do I have the power and the privilege to address this without ultimately getting hurt worse than you in this exchange? I don't. And I had to do that calculation many times where I just stuffed it. And how many of us know what that's like? So we need spaces like this where we can let it out among a sisterhood of people who understand. Because often the way we talk about racism, the isms in general, is in black and white, in extremes. And in the ways in which we actually encounter these isms in our day-to-day lives, especially in corporate America, is much more nuanced. It's much more, sometimes unconscious. It's often at the hands of what I call well-intentioned white people, of whom I know many, and many of which now have the heart to be allies, but they need help doing the right thing. They want to do the right thing, but they need help. And so the beauty of this moment that we're living in, which is unlike any other moment that I can recall, is that there is this opening in the matrix, as I keep calling it, because people want to do better and they want to have these conversations, and we have more power. There's more power in our voice than maybe we've ever known, and there's power in numbers. And so I think now more than ever, if you are young, if you are of color, if you are the only one in the room, if you are first, if you are different, that is your superpower. And leaning into that aspect of your identity is actually what is going to help you do your most transformative work. But it will be on the other side of fear. And that's when you have to look in the face of fear and just do it anyway. And sometimes you just have to take it to Black Twitter, you know? Or sometimes take it to your group text, because it's not every battle is worth engaging in.
We do group text.
Yeah. I have many group texts.
Group text. We should take her mantra. Is that a painting of the book?
Philly, you're just showing out.
Elaine Welteroth, do you see that?
I had to make space. Sorry.
That's a real.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
We had to call on her. Well, you're in Philadelphia.
I had to. This is my only. I knew I was in the back. This is my saving grace. Okay.
Yes. I know. Oh my gosh.
You know what?
That's how you turn up at the Q&A.
I had to. All right, let me read my card. I, Diamond Whipper Young, am claiming space for exploration no matter what my self-doubt may say. This down. So what I thought was important, I follow you, I've watched countless interviews, and I first, thank you for creating this space. Thank you for being vulnerable with us. And one thing that stands out is the power you found when you found your vision. You were like, this is what I want to do. It was like your newfound self. I want to know, I just want you to speak to those women or young girls who may be in that limbo stage where they haven't claimed that vision yet. And just how did you wrestle with that? I know you talked about internal conflicts, but how did you present yourself to the outside world at that point in your life?
That's so good. Give her a round of applause. Yes, Oprah. Yeah. Woo. That was good.
What's your name again, sis? Say your name again.
Diamond. Of course.
Diamond, okay.
Diamond. I like Philly. I'm coming back. Oh, that's such a good question. Okay, so, just like I protected my age, I really protected the seeds of my dreams. We have to be careful where we plant our seeds. And they need sunlight. They need nourishment. They need attention and devotion and prayer and good words. And I think too often we share our dreams with people who are undeserving, and they squash the seed before it ever has an opportunity to flourish. And I think I have chills saying that because I can remember the exact conversations that became turning points that I had a woman on the other end of this conversation, this kind of a conversation, where there was an intimate moment where there was an opening for me to share what I really wanted, what I was so scared to say out loud, even to myself, and the affirmation, the being affirmed by a woman that you revere can change your life. And I think back on those moments and I'm like, if there was another different type of woman on the other end of that conversation, I may never have gone after my dream. And for me, it was my college professor. Her name is Dr. Michelle Foss Snowden. You gotta say their names, your guardian angels' names. I hold her up because I owe her everything. She is the first person that said, yes, you can be. Are you kidding? What she actually said was, duh. And I was like, really? Really? But to most people, I just said nothing. If they said, what are you doing after college? I hated that question. I would just say, I don't know. And I just kept it to myself. And I don't know if I'm superstitious, but I really, really believe you have to keep a tight circle of people who will nurture your dreams. And I also will say to the people who aren't sure what the dream even is, that's the scariest place to be. And that's the hardest place to be, and so many of us find ourselves there. And by the way, you will find yourself there again and again. Because I always say, your life is a series of dreams realized. You do not have to be defined by one dream, by one job title, by one career path, by one relationship, failed or successful. But I remember when I didn't know, and I think the most valuable exercise that I did, that I will share with you, is I think the value in looking back. When you're not sure about what's ahead and you feel lost in the present, go back and think about the way that you played as a child. Before there were labels, before you were placed in a box, before you were told you're too this or too that, too loud, too quiet, too black, too tall, too skinny, too fat. Before the world placed those labels on you, how did you spend your time? In what ways did you feel most ignited? What were those moments? And when I look back, I'm like, I've always been a magazine editor, a storyteller, an interviewer. I think about being 6 years old and being in the bathtub, literally, rather than my mom reading me stories, I dismissed my mother and I did story time with myself where I pretended to be Barbara Walters or Oprah, and I would have imaginary interviews in the bathtub. That is how I spent my bath time. And then I think about, I was as I call it, a chapter brown girl boss. By fourth grade, I was running a salon in my backyard. I was, like my Aunt Janet. I was inspired by my Aunt Janet, and you gotta say the names of your angels. And I remember having a magazine that I remember drawing pictures of women in fashion, and then I would cover the paper with saran wrap for the glossy feel. She was enterprising back then and scrappy, and then somewhere along the line you lose that. You lose that confidence, and it's like a girl like me could never be a magazine editor. I don't know anyone in New York. And all those messages and the self-talk is so destructive. And part of why I called this book More Than Enough is because of this stat that I came across, which I've said this before, you might have heard this, but for those of you who have not heard this, there is a stat that says that young girls' confidence peaks at age 9. And when I was so depressed when I read that, but then I thought about my life, I thought about the women around me and their trajectories, and I'm like, that's not very surprising, because I was, what'd you call me again? I was fierce when I was 9. And then I got in bad relationships. I was trying to camouflage to fit into my social environment. I never even applied to my dream school. I followed a boy to college. Like, he wasn't even enrolled when I got there. Then he ended up in jail. And then it was a whole thing. The spiral was deep. And it's in the book. But I think if we're lucky, if we're fortunate, we will wake up one day and we will realize who we were, and we will do the work to reclaim who we've always been who we were meant to be. And that's what this journey is about. And you will find your way, but if you feel lost, look back. There are breadcrumbs that will lead you in the direction that you're meant to go.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much
Thank
to
you
all
so
of you for joining
much.
us tonight.